She was the Renaissance ideal made flesh. Some say it was unrequited love on one hand and betrayal on the other. The love of his life was gone. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome to Florence, city of beauty and history, a city that has given us geniuses, masterpieces and famous dynasties. But beneath all this beauty, there are stories of passion, obsession and betrayal. And today I want to tell you one of my favorites, the story of Giuliano de' Medici, maybe less famous of the Medici brothers, the younger brother of Florence de' Medici, and Simonetta Vespucci, a woman who was known as the most beautiful woman in the Renaissance. Their love burned bright, and maybe a little bit too bright, because Florence back at the time was not really kind to passionate lovers. Now, before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and follow me as we uncover one of the greatest love stories of this city. What I love about the Medici Palace is that it was built to convey power without actually being too flashy. Although, if we are being honest, nothing about the Medici family has ever been subtle. So let's go and see the palace itself. Lorenzo, the older brother, would come to be known as Il Magnifico, the Magnificent, patron of the artists, poets and philosophers. Giuliano, meanwhile, was the baby brother, young, charming, handsome, deeply adored, known for his romantic spirit. If Lorenzo was strategy and power, Giuliano was heart and spark. And in these very marble corridors in the heart of Florence, a love story like no other was about to bloom. Here comes Simonetta Vespucci. You probably will not recognize her name, but chances are her face will be familiar to you. Simonetta arrives in Florence as a teenager, married to Marco Vespucci. Well, a nobleman, yes, but clearly not a Medici. Still, Marco was respected, but Simonetta, she was worshipped. Blonde hair, pale skin, delicate features, she was the Renaissance ideal made flesh. People also wrote, the chroniclers also wrote about her charm and wit, and she instantly became a legend in Florence. The whole city seemed to have been obsessed. Giuliano saw her at a joust, one of those glittering spectacles where knights paraded, not only for honor, but also for the eyes of the ladies. He declared Simonetta his lady of the tournament, essentially dedicating his victory to her beauty. It was public, it was dramatic and absolutely scandalous, considering that she was married. But obviously, guys, Florence loved drama as much as we do, even all these centuries ago. And very soon, this city started whispering that Giuliano and Simonetta were more than just acquaintances. Of course, Simonetta didn't inspire only Giuliano. She inspired the entire artistic movement in a city that was the cradle of the Renaissance. So imagine Florence back at the time, full of really promising artists and creatives, and they all had this muse. Botticelli himself, yes, the Botticelli, adored her. Some say it was unrequited love, while others consider it was just artistic devotion. But whatever it was, Botticelli kept painting her again and again. He painted her as Flora, as Venus, as countless mythological figures. And remember, guys, when I said that you might not know her name, but you will most probably recognize her face? That's right. When you look at the birth of Venus, that's Simonetta's face gazing back at you, reborn from the sea foam.
Imagine being so beautiful that your features define the very concept of beauty for half a millennium. And here's the catch: Simonetta died so young, at only 22, that she was forever frozen in time. Eternal youth, eternal perfection. Botticelli gave her immortality, but her story was about to take a cruel turn. However, let's pause here for a moment, because Botticelli's art and the very fact that he could immortalize Simonetta was hugely influenced by Giuliano's family, because the Medicis weren't just about power, they were patrons. They poured money into art, into literature, into culture. They wanted Florence to shine as the beating heart of the Renaissance, and it did.
But here's the thing, under the surface, Florence was not only poetry and paintings. Rivalries simmered and daggers were sharpened. Even as Giuliano basked in love and admiration, enemies were circling. And the brighter you shine in Florence, the more dangerous your shadows may become. And then tragedy struck. Simonetta fell ill. Most historians today think it was tuberculosis, although nobody knows for sure what hit her. She wasted away at the age of only 22. The most famous beauty of Florence ceased to live and to walk the streets. Giuliano was inconsolable, and Botticelli, according to some, kept sketching her even on her deathbed. The whole Florence draped itself in mourning. Imagine the whole city mourning not just a person, but an ideal. Simonetta was the perfect Renaissance woman, gone far too soon. For Giuliano, it became a wound that would never heal, and for Florence, it became a reminder that even the most gorgeous beauty is fleeting and fragile, fading over time, but not in case of Simonetta, who keeps living even today on canvases. Simonetta was buried here in the Vespucci family chapel at Ognissanti Church, and decades later, Botticelli reportedly asked to be buried at her feet. Whether it's a myth or a fact, it hardly matters, because it's become the urban legend of Florence. And what really matters today is that even in death, she still inspired devotion. Giuliano carried her memory, and the city, Florence itself, carried her image in its art. But the story of love and loss doesn't end here. The city and Giuliano himself still had more blood to shed. The original Vespucci chapel, and we can assume that Simonetta was buried here. However, over the centuries and with numerous floods hitting Florence, there is no more tomb of Simonetta, so we can only guess that she might have been buried somewhere over here, considering that Botticelli's tomb is located right nearby beside her and supposedly at her feet. While Giuliano mourned, the Florence's politics kept boiling, because Medici were not just patrons, they were rulers, and not everybody liked it. Enter the Pazzi family, the rivals hungry for power, who kept plotting together with their allies And the idea was to assassinate both Medici brothers at the same time. So while Giuliano was remembered as the heartbroken lover, people across Florence in dusty rooms were signing his death warrant. And I think, isn't it the most Renaissance thing ever? Love on one hand and betrayal on the other. Basically cappuccinos and conspiracy.
And it happened here. Easter Sunday, 1478, the Duomo was packed. The Mass was holy, solemn, grand, and in an instant it became a bloodbath. Giuliano was ambushed at the altar, stabbed over a dozen times. He bled out on the marble floor. His brother, Lorenzo, fought his way free and survived, but Florence was thrown into chaos that day.
The Pazzi conspirators miscalculated. People rose up for the Medicis, and Lorenzo's revenge was swift and brutal. Everybody involved in the conspiracy was hung from the very windows of Palazzo della Signoria. But for Giuliano, of course, it was already too late. The love of his life was gone, and now he too was struck down on the precise day of Simonetta's death 2 years prior. Honestly, I think it was a story worse of the Greek tragedy, except for it was written right here among the streets of Florence. Florence still remembers in its art, its churches, its stones. Giuliano's remains now rest here together with his brother. And this tragic love story of eternal youth and eternal love still lingers in the streets of Florence. And if you listen closely, you may still hear these streets whispering their story. While I will see you next time with a new story, so don't forget to subscribe and have a great day ahead.